Have you ever gotten one comment or email or strange reaction from a client or potential client and suddenly found yourself rethinking your entire business? Like, yikes, am I being too pushy? Is my marketing too much? Should I redo what I'm doing? If so, I've been there too. I know that negative comment spiral, and it's a nasty place to be. And today I want to teach you one of my favorite and most important sleaze-free selling and branding principles that I live by. Don't cater to the critic. By the end of this episode, you'll go from worrying about one negative comment to knowing how to evaluate all feedback with perspective. Today, you'll learn how to recognize the difference between useful insight and critic noise so you can keep marketing, selling, and leading without watering down the very things that make your work so valuable. Let's do it. Welcome to the Establish Yourself podcast, the show that helps coaches and consultants get clear on how to talk about what you do, simplify your offers, and have more fun in your business and beyond. I'm Annie Franceschi, brand strategist, author, former Disney storyteller, and forever Muppet fan. I'm here to help you clarify your message, package your expertise, and streamline your systems to grow a business you actually enjoy. If you're ready for less confusion and more magic, it's time to establish yourself. I was thinking about Don't Cater to the Critic recently because I got an email from one of my Magic Momentum clients. They came to me for advice on how to handle the comment they got after they delivered a program. This client had been doing a training earlier this year for more than 40 employees. She did a survey and got back a comment that sounded like this. I felt like this course was primarily a plug for the book. I'm not a huge fan of attending courses that are advertisements. This was abated for me by the apparent genuine care of the presenter for the participants. Oh, yikes. I want to pause here for a second because if you're anything like me, you can feel that one in your body, in your brain, in your back, right? When you get a comment like that. Ugh. But I was really grateful that my client asked a very thoughtful question. They came to me and said, do you think I should change anything? Should I change my workbook and how I'm positioning my book in relation to how I'm sharing this training? Am I being too pushy? And they didn't just ask those questions, they also gave me more context for this comment because they said that, hey, I've had this program running for years. About 150 people have done it. And this is the one time I've gotten a comment like this. I've also already talked to the event planner and they weren't concerned. And she has seen, 9 out of 10 ratings consistently over the years she's been doing it. She also has comments like, this is the best conflict training I've ever taken, or I wish I had taken this earlier in my career, or I want all my employees to take this program. So in this real scenario, we have one critical comment standing next to years of strong results, strong feedback, great demand. But still, I understand exactly why this question landed in my inbox because we all do this. We all get that one, no. And it can feel louder than 100 thank yous. This is amazing. My dad used to work in advertising in New York, and there's a saying that he shared with me years ago. One oh crap is worth 1,000 attaboys. He didn't say crap, but this is a clean podcast. And I've always come back to that and resonated with that because I myself am a recovering people pleaser. I take feedback very seriously, almost too seriously. I want to do good work. I want people to feel cared for. I want people to feel respected and included. But I've had to learn that taking feedback seriously is not the same as taking every piece of feedback as gospel. And that's the key distinction I want to make today. Because here's what I see happening is when we worry too much about the critical comments, we're doing people-pleasing marketing. And people-pleasing marketing waters down your brand. People-pleasing marketing forces you to hide yourself. Ideal client-pleasing marketing is the opposite. That's where we choose to really focus and listen on the people who are not the critics, but the people who are our ideal clients. To thrive, your brand needs an edge. It needs your voice, your perspective, judgment, lived experience, your unique way of seeing the world and your industry. But when you try to hide or shrink or fix everything that these people who come out of the woodwork complain about, you're risking watering down your brand. your business, and the appeal that you have for the clients you really can hit home runs for. Because here's the deal, not every fish is your fish, and not every piece of feedback deserves the same weight. I'm not immune to this. It's part of how I've developed this concept that I come back to about don't cater to the critic. I had a discovery call about 2 years ago, and, the first few minutes were going fine. I was listening to the person. They were sharing what was going on in their coaching practice, and about, I don't know, 10 minutes into a 20-minute conversation, I decided to share my offer with that person because it sounded like I was a really good potential fit for the problem that they were experiencing. Nearly as soon as I made that transition from sharing what was going on in their practice to connecting it to, great, I think I might have something to help. Here's what I do. This person kind of panicked and they quickly became very angry. And they said something like, "This isn't working for me. This just isn't working for me." Pardon the impression, right? I'm not going to call this person out. But they just had this really visceral reaction, and I was just like, "Whoa, what is happening?" I tried to manage the call as it was the best I could. So I was like, "Okay, well, sounds like maybe we're not a fit if this isn't making sense to you or doesn't feel in alignment for you." And the person was like, "Yeah, it's just not working for me." I was like, "Oh, okay. Well, then we can certainly end the conversation and I wish you well." And we hung up the Zoom, and I was so grateful that we were not in a coffee shop and I didn't have to get up and walk out with my head between my legs like, "Ooh." I was spiraling, I was confused, I was sad, I was mad, like, let's be honest. I remember I bolted out the door to call my husband, as we all do, we call our person, right? And I was just like, "You will not believe," blah, blah, blah," and I was just, like, so frustrated and trying to make sense of the whole thing and just being like, "Oh my gosh, like, am I too salesy? Did I offend this person? Like, should I change what I'm doing? Should I take how I'm talking about what I do?" Like, I was just in that negative comment spiral, or let's call it what it is, the crappy comment spiral. And I talked it through and I processed it and I remembered something that my awesome counselor recommends, which she says, "Look at the facts." Because I tend to tell myself stories. That's a great skill of mine, but it's also a challenge for me that I can invent this whole story of how I'm so wrong. I need to change all these things. And I started really looking at the facts and I was like, you know what? Let me do some back of the envelope math. Like, conservatively, how many discovery calls, 20-minute calls with potential clients have I done in my whole history of my business? And at that point, I've been in business for like 10, 11 years. And I was like, well, conservatively, I've had 700 of these calls. And I did the math and it was like 0.14% of the calls. This one call was such a tiny fraction of all the conversations I've ever had. You know, am I going to let that tiny percentage completely shake and unnerve me? No. Now, I think it's important to reflect. I'm always willing to ask, is there something I can learn here? But when I looked at those facts and I thought back on the conversation, this person was never going to be a great fit for me to work with. They clearly didn't resonate with how I like to communicate. We didn't have the chemistry. They didn't connect with my values around having these kinds of conversations or my approach. And no offense to them, that's totally fine. We just weren't a fit. But the mistake there for me would be to internalize that feedback and to try to go after that person, to try to change what I was doing and be less me in how I approached what I do because I had this one really negative, strong reaction. So the best thing that I could do was look at the facts, put it in context, and realize that that particular person was never going to be my ideal client. So I shouldn't take their feedback as gospel. So, what can you do? What do you do when this inevitably happens? Or I know there's probably something somebody said along the way, an email you got, a text you received, a LinkedIn message, a comment, something in the back of your brain that's sitting there rent free. How do we handle that? How do we process it? If you're out there doing it, everything, I just want you to know that no amount of being thoughtful or smart, valuable, high quality, or strategic protects you from situations like this and feedback like this. Lord, if it did, I would be impenetrable. Like I want it to be the most perfect and I don't want to upset anybody. But there's no immunity to this. So here are 4 steps I want you to use the next time you get a comment that sends you into this spiral. Step 1, look at the facts. Not the story your brain is telling, not the, oh my gosh, I've ruined everything. What are the facts? How many people have experienced this offer, call, program, workshop, or piece of content? How many people have given you great feedback on it? How many people have gotten results? How many have bought or referred or reviewed or recommended or come back for more, right? Going back to my client's example, the facts were more than 150 people had taken her program. This was the first and only comment she'd ever gotten like that. The event planner wasn't concerned. Her ratings were consistently high. The qualitative comments were excellent. That is the very definition of an outlier. And outliers can be very useful. They can point you to new ideas, but they shouldn't automatically become the boss of your business. So before you redo things or rework your sales page or scrap your offer or your message, stop and ask yourself, what are the facts? What's the actual pattern? Is this part of a trend? Or is this one person having a reaction? That question alone can save you so much unnecessary rework and stress. Step 2, consider the source. This is the part we often skip. We treat all feedback like it has equal value because we don't want to upset anybody, but it doesn't. Your ideal client's feedback should carry more weight than the notes of somebody who's never going to hire you, never refer you, never champion you, or understand what you are trying to build. That doesn't make you rude. It doesn't mean that you dismiss everyone. It doesn't mean you refuse growth or opportunities. It means putting feedback through a filter of perspective. Is the person that shared this information with you a potential fan, or are they more than likely a critic? Are they someone who truly understands your work, values, strategy, goals, and audience? Are they someone who gets results from what you do? Are they someone you want more of in your business? Are they someone you had chemistry with or had difficulty talking to? Or are they someone who is just never going to be your fish? Sometimes, in my experience, the person giving the feedback is another coach, consultant, or service provider who has a totally different business model, completely different goals, and maybe a success rate you have no idea about. You might think they're crushing it, and they may be struggling to get their next person. And sometimes the person on the other end of the call or the other end of the line, they just had a hard day. They made an inaccurate assumption about you. Sometimes the person is struggling and wants to tell you what to do to gain some control. And sometimes the person's just not your person. Not every fish is your fish. So, thank people for their feedback if and when it makes sense. But don't ever automatically hand them the keys to your brand. You are in the driver's seat. Step 3, separate useful feedback from critic noise. I want to be really clear here. The lesson isn't ignore feedback, it's evaluate it. There's a big difference. Sometimes feedback points to the real issue, like your positioning is unclear, or your expectations are not being set well, or you needed to be more thoughtful in how you handled the sales call. Great. If that's true, take what's useful and improve. But don't let the sharp comment be the mandate, because when it does, it dilutes your entire point of view. You can ask yourself, is there anything objectively useful here? Is there a small adjustment that would make my experience clearer for my ideal clients? Or am I trying to make this criticism impossible to ever receive again? The last part is a trap because you can't build a brand that protects you from every possible criticism. You can only build one that's clear, honest, strategic, and resonant with the right people. That's the goal, not perfection. Hard for me to admit, not I upset nobody, but the I upset no one goal, it makes it hard for your ideal clients to find you. It's not leadership, growth, or standing out or being remembered. It's hiding, which leads me to step 4. Keep showing up for your right people. Something I've been learning from talking to people who make 6 figures and multiple 6 figures is that marketing touch points have increased dramatically from what they used to be just a few years ago. Back in 2021, 2022, it used to take an average of 9 to 13 touches for someone to become your client. Somebody mentions you in a conversation, that person Googles you, then they listen to your podcast, they download your freebie. And they forget about you for 6 months, then somebody else brings you up in conversation. They see you on LinkedIn, etcetera. You start to see those are the touch points, right? But now in the past few years, the number has grown to an average of 41 to 42 touch points. And it takes so much more to reach people because we're inundated. We're getting all this content in our faces. We need to talk more about what we do. But when we do that, we're going to be more vulnerable. We're going to hear more from the critics. It's what comes part and parcel with visibility. So that's really what I want to remind you of is to not let those voices, those moments, those situations dim your light. Because if you dim your light and you hide your value under a rock, you know who's never going to find it? The people who really need you. So trust in what you're doing. Pull yourself out of the spiral. Don't cater to the critic and let the right people find you. And if this has helped you think more about how you want to show up for your brand and how you want to talk about what you do in a way that brings those right people in, this is what I help people do through my package your process framework. I help you get clear on how you talk about what you do and offer, how you package your services, even how you have discovery calls that you can feel good about, even if they're, not perfect, maybe 1% of the time, right? So if you're curious about working together, set a free time to talk with me at greateststorycreative.com/consult. I'll put a link in the show notes and would be happy to talk to you soon. Here's what I want you to remember most from today. Don't cater to the critic. If you want to be true to you and grow your business, here are the 4 things you want to make sure to do so that you are not letting the negative comment spiral trap you. 1, look at the facts. 2, consider the source. 3, separate useful feedback from critic noise. And 4, keep showing up for your right people. And if one sentence from one person has been living rent free in your head, I want you to ask yourself today, am I catering to a critic or am I focusing on serving my ideal clients? I know the next time you get a crappy comment, it won't shrek you. You've got this. Hey, do you like surprises? The credits are about to roll, but just like a Marvel movie, stick around to the end for something I put in just for you. Thanks for listening to the Establish Yourself podcast. I'm Annie Franceschi, and if you're enjoying the show, it would mean so much to me if you follow it, leave a quick rating, or share it with a friend. And for free branding resources and more ways to work together, head to greateststorycreative.com/podcast. Now here it is, your moment of magic. So I've become a big proponent of looking at the facts, and this showed up for me this past week when I finally had a few minutes to write down all the stand-up comedy gigs I've done since I started with the class I took last fall in fall 2025. And I would really encourage you to do this step if you've started something like you're speaking, you're doing something new, going on podcast, like writing down when you did these things and about how many people either downloaded the episode or saw you in person. For me, I counted about how many people conservatively saw me. And I was really excited to see that I had done 17 different comedy appearances. And then I had done comedy in front of 450 people, like an hour and a half of comedy in front of 450 people. I couldn't have told you that yesterday until I actually ran the numbers. And that has a really nice bounce effect for me of feeling momentum, seeing the hard work over time. I would have said, oh, I've done a couple open mics. But no, conservatively, I have done comedy in front of 450 people and gotten on stage for an hour and a half. Like that is meaningful. And that's credibility I can leverage as I grow into more clean corporate comedy. So, you know, anything that you've tried recently, or, you can even backdate this, do it in the past, but try to look at the facts of what the numbers behind the incredible work you're doing. And I think you'll be surprised and delighted at how your hard work is paying off.